customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. This week, John talks with Cassandra Worthy, the world's leading expert on change enthusiasm. She is lighting the world on fire with her refreshingly unique take on not just managing, but growing through change. In this episode, you'll learn Cassandra's backstory before founding her firm, Change Enthusiasm Global. What inspired Cassandra into leading the work she does? What is change enthusiasm? How Cassandra is seeing the impact of her work, notably these past couple years through the pandemic, and what Cassandra will be presenting on at the 2022 Customer Service Revolution. Now here's your host, John DiJulius.
Hello, revolutionaries. This is John DiJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DiJulius Group, and welcome to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Today, I am so excited to have the legendary Cassandra Worthy, who's the world's leading expert on change enthusiasm. She is lighting the world on fire with a refreshing, unique take on not just managing, but growing through change. Welcome, Cassandra.
John, what it do? Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
There's so much I want to unpack. Tell us what change enthusiasm means.
That's a good way to start.
Yeah.
That's a good way to start. So often when we are going through experiencing big change, big disruption, things happening at work or even in our personal lives, we hear about the importance of having a mindset of growth or a growth mindset. So you probably hear that a lot, but too seldom are we told, what is that? What is a growth mindset and how does one practice it? So that's really what I'm striving to give the world and change enthusiasm. It is a growth mindset, but it's structured in a very pragmatic way and meets you exactly where you are. So it's a 3-step mental process. And I call these steps the signal, the opportunity, and the choice. And the signal is about these difficult emotions that we often face and are inspired when we're going through a lot of disruption, like fear, like frustration, like anger. And it's in this first step that you're really acknowledging the existence of these emotions, knowing that it's okay, and accepting their invitation into your opportunity to grow, to evolve and become better. And that takes you to the second step, which is that opportunity, right? Weighing options. How can I milk this opportunity that I find myself in for all that it's worth so that I can become better today than I was yesterday? And then that final step is the choice, right? Through the power of choice, we can transform our energetic signature. We can transform those signal emotions into things like hope, like joy, like gratitude, like anticipation. These are emotional energies that I call growth sustaining emotions of change. And so, this is a growth mindset that enables those who practice it the ability to harness the power of emotion to fuel their growth and their betterment when going through change, disruption, even as big as a global pandemic.
And that's why I think your book, your topic is so timely. I feel like, and correct me, you're the expert. Disruption is the new norm. Like everything is changing and there's just so much from individual, personal to professional, company to, and we'll get into this and I'm putting the cart way before the horse, but we all know people on our team or in our family that hate change. And then we have the opposite end of the spectrum where, there's people that, chase the new shiny object and they're on to something new and they never stop and make it happen. So there's so much I want to unpack with you and how this all affects the mental health, which I believe is a new responsibility of businesses, unlike ever before, that we better, as leaders, we better understand that our employees' mental health is part of our responsibility to coach. And I'd love to have you tell me I'm full of crap or if I'm on the right path. But before we do all that, tell us what Cassandra's backstory is. How did you get here?
Sure. And yeah, there's a lot that you just said that I want to immediately address, but
I know.
We'll get to it. It's a lot to unpack.
Cassandra, I know we know each other a little bit so far, but I got to warn you, I have total ADD and I bounce. I really bounce. So you might have to rein me in, even though you're being.
Listen, John, we are going to get along because I have the same.
Okay, good.
I'm so quick to start watching a squirrel, which is why I keep
my
shades
right.
So I don't get distracted. All right, let's focus in for the listeners. Focus
Okay.
In. Okay, so my background. So I've always had an insatiable curiosity. I've always asked questions of what I call the mysteries of life. And so I often tell people that science and math, those disciplines, they found me because they armed me with the tools to answer so many of those questions. So growing up, I naturally gravitated towards science and math, and I found myself in chemical engineering. So I got my chemical engineering degree from Georgia Tech. Yeah. And I had interviewed a few times in school for different research firms, but I also landed an internship with Procter & Gamble in the consumer packaged goods industry and just fell in love with the nature of that work, with the culture of that business.
You fell in love with Ohio.
Up in Ohio.
E&G is headquartered in Ohio.
That's right. So yeah, I went on to Cincinnati after university, and I spent about 4 years there working in their hair care division, getting to scale up shampoo formulations, design shampoo formulations all over the world, which was super exciting, which really nurtured the seed of my passion of exploring the new cultures, new experiences, new tastes, new sounds. And also I learned a great deal. And then after that, about 3.5, 4 years, I landed a growth opportunity, which was going to work in one of our recently acquired businesses up in Boston. And I was there for a couple years, and it was probably the most challenging and stretching assignment that I've ever had, being a part of an acquisition and feeling that us versus them culture. And honestly, it was that experience that then planted the seed of what has now become Change Enthusiasm Global, my growth enablement firm, where we do training and leadership development. But after those 2 years, I then spent another 8 years or so in Duracell. 4 of those years were when it was still with Procter. And then, of course, Duracell was acquired by Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett. So yet again, I got to practice change enthusiasm as an executive leading organizations through that acquisition. So again, more experience with change and all the emotions that come behind it. And so it was really those experiences that started to give me this idea that this is something that I could package in a way that can enable other folks to see the power of emotion, the importance of acknowledging them when employees in your workforce are going through a lot of change, and the power that the individual has to choose how they're going to grow through that change and become better and leverage it as a growth opportunity, a learning opportunity for them. And so it was that coupled with just this intuition telling me that there was something bigger, there's something better for me to share my natural gifts and talents with the world outside of leading innovation as I had been in corporate. And so as I started following that curiosity, putting one step over the other, I found myself on a stage talking about change enthusiasm, what I'm so passionate about. And I was lit up. And I knew that this is my purpose. And so I'm grateful now to wake up every day and live on purpose, to share this message, to share the tools, to build capabilities in leaders across industries and businesses all over the world. And I'm just so grateful for it.
No, I mean, I can't believe how many hats. So you are a nerd, which I never would have thought you were a nerd. Chemical engineering. Yes. I mean, you have so much personality. You're so, and that's such a bad stereotype that you have so much energy but that you're a nerd. And then you have spent a couple decades in the corporate world with some of the biggest brands in the world. And now you've found a way to harness all that in your current company, a consulting firm called Change Enthusiasm Global. So that's really cool because that's a bunch of great different background and experiences that you can relate to, both corporate, small business. And I'm just really excited to unpack what you're doing. And you are one of the most sought after speakers around, and everyone talks about you and just what you're doing and the impact you're having. I'm so excited that you're one of our primary keynote speakers at this year's 2022 Customer Service Revolution Conference in Cleveland. But let's talk about that. And what has changed? What is the growth mindset? What is all that? Because there's so many things, right? From early age to, our parents get divorced. We have trauma, all the things in professionally, personally. How, maybe it's through your 3 steps, but how do you handle this as a leader and there's so many things. The leader has to be able to handle his or hers, as well as be able to coach and effectively have their team members be able to handle what's going on in their personal and professional life. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, you got that. It always starts with us. And speaking of which, first off, thank you for the compliment of the nerd. There are 2 things that I embrace with open arms, and I invite anyone listening to embrace: my nerddom and my weirdness.
That's awesome.
Those are 2 things, nerdy and weird. Oh, I love to be called that. It makes my heart sing. So y'all embrace your weirdness. Weird changes the world. But yes, no, you're right. It starts with the individual. And I think something that the pandemic, one of the good parts of what the world, this trauma that the entire world has experienced, is a recognition of the existence and the importance of emotional energy. And you talked about mental health. And I think that businesses and leaders, executives are starting to understand that, we are not just human capital. We are not just these resources that you can plug and play like we're, portions of a machine, like cogs in a machine. We are emotional beings. As Brene Brown says, we are emotional beings first, cognitive later, right? Emotional beings that think from time to time. And so I think that the pandemic has allowed us to see the real humanity of everyone, of the world, right? And that humanity shows up, whether they're working on deliverables to move a business forward, or caring for their children, or providing and supporting their partner or their spouse. And so I think that's been something that's been very powerful. And I'm starting to see that shift in the work that I lead, right? And I think a lot of the clients that are coming knocking on the door now are talking about, we need to be bringing this to the forefront. We need help for employees knowing that we want them to acknowledge that emotional energy and that we see the importance of doing that. And they're starting to embrace the idea of leaving emotion at the door of business is an antiquated one. Because, what I've always said, when you do that, you leave humanity at the door of business. And of course, we can afford to do that if we want to remain competitive, regardless of what industry that you're in. But yeah, I think as a leader, it truly does start with you. Especially when you're going through a lot of stressful, tumultuous change, you have to take care of you first, right? And understanding and acknowledging your own emotional energy so that you can show up the best and brightest for your teams and for your organization. And I think
how does someone do that? Obviously, put your own mask on first, right?
Correct.
Before you help
Correct.
out. And the first time I ever heard that, I thought that was totally selfish. But I understand that I'm going to be worthless to my family and my team members and my clients if I don't, find a way to live the best version of my life. And that isn't to be selfish. But how does one do that?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of trusting and having a deeply held belief in exactly what you just said. If I don't take care of me, if I don't listen to my own signal emotions, if I don't use the opportunity for self-care, then I'm going to experience burnout, or I won't be able to show up as big and brightly for my team. If I truly want to be the best leader that I can be for others around me, step 1 is taking care of me. Step 1 is taking care of me. And I can't tell you how often I have to coach executives on the importance of self-care, the importance of their own emotional self-awareness. And the other byproduct of that is, right, there's a phenomenon that I write about in my book called emotional contagion, which is—
Say that again, emotional what?
Emotional contagion. Emotional contagion. We can catch the emotions of those around us. And so as leaders, we really need to be in tune and taking responsibility for the energy that we bring into the room, the energy that we're sharing in our organization and our teams. And the more that we can be emotionally self-aware, I think the larger and greater impact that we have on our organizations. And also, I always welcome what I call confident vulnerability. So, sharing that you might be having some tough emotions, you might be having some fear, You might be feeling some frustration, but just let it be rooted in the mission and the vision. I trust that we're going to be successful in this change initiative. We're going to get there together as a team, but I too am feeling frustrated. I too have a bit of fear surrounding this, but I know that as a team, we're going to be successful moving forward. And that vulnerability just invites this really genuine, authentic connection and also shows your own humanity and authenticity, which can really boost engagement and confidence, believe it or not, in your employees and your workforce.
Need help getting brilliant at the basics? Contact Claudia at thedijuliusgroup.com and find out how the team of consultants at the DiJulius Group can help you get there.
So I got a self-serving question here. One of my daily mantras that I created years ago was to always bring an energizing moment to people, right? To bring the energy. And after about a year, I had to kind of tweak that a little bit because, like you, bringing energy is like rolling out of bed. That wasn't hard. I didn't have to think about that. But what I had to think about was what type of energy, right?
Correct.
Because I always bring energy, but sometimes I'm not aware that that energy could be as destructive as it could be positive. And so I had to remember that, by adding just the simple word, bring positive energy to the room, to the conversation, to the meeting, to my family was the work, because I could level people without realizing it, and they're excited to see me or they're excited I'm home, but I could bring, I could be an energy sucker as much as I was an energy giver.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to do, and thank you for sharing that and your journey there. The one thing I want to do to coach this is helping folks understand that this change enthusiasm is not about blind positivity, right? It's not about always being the rah, yeah, we can do it, we can win, because that can oftentimes come off as inauthentic. And also it can ignore or act like you're not acknowledging the very difficult nature that change can present. Right? It's really about bringing your authentic energy. And if that means that perhaps one day you're feeling a little lower, acknowledge that. You know what? My energy is not as low today, but you know what? I am in it. I am excited for the journey. I'm going to get me some good rest tonight, and I'm going to be back at it tomorrow. So really, it's about that authentic energy, recognizing how that's flowing through you, while at the same time, just taking responsibility and accountability for what you're bringing into the room. And I always invite folks to think about the part of a change or the part of a disruption that they get most excited about, like truly get excited about authentically, and then focus in on that and share that with the team. This aspect I'm jazzed about, and here are the reasons why. And that excitement that you're sharing will then inspire, hopefully, excitement in your teammates and in your workforce.
Love it. Love it. And so we got to start with ourselves. Yeah. And then how do we help our team members, our family members, whatever that may look like, of the people that hate change, they're resistant to change? I just asked, I had a leadership meeting in one of my companies, and I said, how is the software we're using? I'm hearing a lot of complaints that it might be outdated, antiquated. And one of our leaders says, we hate change. So that's why we tell you it's just fine. And, that really scared me, because, what is happening as a result of hating change is we're on a thing that, it's on DOS practically. How do we help those that resist change? Because we all need to change.
Well, as a scientist, as an engineer, I always like to drive down to root cause. Right. And so in the work that I've done and the research that we've done, it's, for me, that resistance is most commonly rooted in fear. It's rooted in the desire to not be in a zone of discomfort, to not be in a place where I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I'm in this growth zone. It's uncomfortable. I'm frustrated. Why should I go there when I'm comfortable in this lane? I know what I'm doing. Maybe I'm the go-to expert, and it's working just fine, and I'm getting the work done. So a lot of it is rooted in fear and not wanting to get in that zone of discomfort, which for me is a zone of high growth. And so I think that empathy is one of probably the greatest skills that, as a leader, and especially leading through change, that we can flex, and allowing those employees to emote and to share some of their concerns, to share that fear, and really get at understanding and acknowledging that that emotional energy is there, and then try to understand, well, what are the thoughts that are bringing your awareness into that? What's really inspiring that fear within you? Why do you not like this change? When you think about going into a new operating system, using a new software that's far more efficient, that's going to help us be more innovative, what's holding you back from that? And then try to address those points, one after the other. And the other thing that I like to offer, especially when there's a lot of resistance, when you're trying to move into something new that's going to be more efficient and better, is to understand where the skills that exist today, how they are still critical and will still be necessary in the new place that you're moving to. And that will usually allow employees to understand, okay, there are changes that are going to be made, but this stuff that I do today, they're still going to need it. So they're still going to need these skills. And I'm very confident and competent in these skills. So it's great to draw that parallel to help kind of quell some of those fears of being uncomfortable.
And then let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. A lot of CEOs, I'm sure I'm guilty of it. We come back from a conference or read a great book and, we rally everyone around and say, we're going down this path now. And, a lot of number twos and second in commands are like, just give him or her a week and she'll be on to something else. And I almost have, I don't know, this has to be a characteristic. I am best during a crisis, during a recession, during a pandemic, because I'm needed, right? Mm-hmm. It's when things are going great that I kind of feel like I'm not, so I want to break it. So I'm needed again, right? So
you repair it.
Right. So be my therapist and help me not change just for the sake of changing.
Right. Yeah, and that's important, right? You don't want to just introduce chaotic change just so you can feel alive and vibrant.
Right.
There needs to be a good need and a reason that you're doing it. And that's the why, right? Simon Sinek would say it's so important that, first and foremost, when you're making a change, you strongly communicate the why and you tie all of the initiatives, all the actions, everything that you're asking the organization to do to that why, so that they can have something that they can hang on to. And for me, the way that it translates in my work and the things that I've, captured in the book is the why is really about belief, right? It's about belief. And I firmly believe that you cannot have sustained change unless you can sustain the beliefs that drive that change, right? Sustain the beliefs that drive that change. Because once you can get employees believing that this is the right thing to do, believing in the rationale you're presenting as to why you want to move this way, then they'll start understanding, okay, I believe in this. I know that we need to do this. So now what can I do to actually make this happen? And so it's so important that you instill and offer that why and begin nurturing those beliefs and then role modeling the behaviors that actually will continue to nurture those beliefs. And of course, that, changing belief, it takes time. And I firmly believe that's why oftentimes change takes time. Yeah. Because you're literally having to change hearts and minds. And we are complex beings. And so that can take a minute. But it's important that, again, you're clear on the why, you're clear on what those beliefs are that are driving towards the change. And then what are those behaviors that are going to be required in order to make the change happen? And make sure you as a CEO are role modeling that and your leadership team is doing that as well. And that'll build that momentum towards the change.
So Cassandra, how does this work? And it may work the exact same. We're talking a lot about individually and leaders and team members or at home. What about a company? How do we avoid being the next blockbuster where we're killing it, but what worked yesterday isn't working today and what's working today isn't working tomorrow? How do we avoid from having the blinders on and being intoxicated with today's success? And then all of a sudden Uber comes along and disrupts us.
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned Blockbuster. One of my colleagues who was an ex-Procter & Gamble marketing director, he's now a speaker, he uses that as a case study. And there was an individual within Blockbuster that shared to the executive team that, our customers are really not liking late fees. And they're really liking this idea of movies being shipped to them. And then they were like, well, then what do you expect us to do? Shut down these thousands of stores? What are you asking me to do here? And then they were like, well, I don't know. but the customers really don't like late fees and they really like, moves being shipped to them. So I think that those leaders had those blinders on, had those biases in, knowing that this is our bread and butter. We've been successful doing this.
12% of their profits came from late fees.
Yes.
Dare you suggest such a thing?
Get rid of that. Are you kidding me? That's how we've been successful. Right. So I think the critical learning in that is just what you said. Take these blinders off. Take the blinders off and listen to those employees. Inspire the most authentic essence of individuals. And I think that's what best leaders do, is that they empower others and bring out the best in them. And if you're doing that, listen to the ideas that are being presented and try as best you can to remove those blinders and listen to those ideas that might be a little bit scary. And it's usually the ones that are the scariest that are probably going to be the game changers that you really need to be paying good attention to. So for me, as you think about it as a leader, continuing to nurture the authentic essence and the best in others, and then get rid of those blinders, those unconscious and conscious biases, and be open to that breakthrough and disruptive innovation.
And finally, on the mental health, right? We have so many generations in the workforce today. And we have my generation that, pull up your socks. And we would have gotten a backhand if we would have gone to our parents and said, I'm depressed. And I do think, there are always positives that come out. And one of the positives, and you might have even said this, came in from the pandemic, is that it gave permission. It wasn't taboo to admit that you were struggling. And I think the statistic is 1 out of 5 adults suffer from anxiety and depression. And when you go from 30 and under, it's 1 out of 3. So you got two sides of that. And, how do we help them? How do we recognize it? But the second side is, all right, I may be a leader or parent that doesn't suffer from it, but someone in my family does, or someone on my team does. And I have to know how to relate, recognize, see what you call signals, so I can help them. Because obviously, if a team member doesn't suffer from it, but someone definitely in his or her family does, they're going to struggle at work. We can't, turn that off. So I threw a lot at you.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, for me, it's pretty basic. I think it starts with striving to create authentic, genuine connection with those that we work with, so that you are creating and nurturing an environment of trust and of safety. Right? Because when employees feel that there is trust there and they're in a safe environment, when they're at work, connecting with peers, connecting with management, they're going to be much more apt when you do flex empathy, when you do want to hold space, when you do want to have a check-in, to actually share with you what's really going on, as opposed to, I'm fine, as opposed to, no, I'm good. And how many times have we heard that, right? And so when you can create and nurture this environment of trust, of safety, when you're striving always to find that authentic, genuine connection and allowing your employees to emote, letting them know you want to acknowledge that it's okay if they're feeling that way, there'll be a greater level of comfort to express that emotion, to share when there's difficulty, to share when they need to take a beat and maybe take some time off because of something that they're going with. And so for me, the foundational part is taking full accountability and responsibility for creating that environment with your peers, with the direct reports, with your management, that you can be trusted and that you are going to create a safe environment for them to express and to emote. Because, you can only move from a place of trust and safety if you think about flexing empathy and holding space, right? One can strive to be as empathetic as they possibly can, but if the employee doesn't trust you, and if it's not a safe environment in the workplace, then you're not going to get the really real, and there won't be any level of productive conversation and something that can truly be helpful and supportive for that individual.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't think we're telling every leader out there that they have to become therapists.
Of course not.
No,
of course not. Please don't, in fact.
Right. I do believe helping employees and providing resources of, if they need, here's where you potentially could go, but creating that safe space, creating that it's okay, and we're here to help you in whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I've had clients who have brought in other professionals that have allowed, employees to have those more in-depth conversations. So inviting in the external experts that are really savvy in having these type of conversations and providing this type of mental well-being and support. So acknowledge the fact that you're not the expert in the area, but ultimately that you care about the workforce. We are, again, emotional beings, and you care about the humanity of the workforce and just provide the programs, the expertise to support them. Yeah.
And something I heard recently, which I love it, and you're saying it, is train the whole person, coach the whole person, help the whole person, not just here's how you can be more productive and efficient for me today, right? But it's about helping you in the 4 F's, family, fitness, forgetting the other 2, but finance and faith, right? And it's not just about, how much I can squeeze out of you today, but I want you to be happy in all parts of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it.
I love it. Cassandra works with companies like Johnson & Johnson, CVS Pharmacy, Bristol Myers Squibb, Snapchat, and Cisco, and many more. Tell everyone, and we're going to have links in the show notes to your book. The name of your book is?
Change Enthusiasm, How to Harness the Power of Emotion for Leadership and Success. But if you Google Change Enthusiasm, you'll find it.
That's awesome. We're also going to have how you can follow her in social media, her website, how you can engage with her, and so many other things. She brings so much to her clients and to people. And tell, I'm sure it's already what you talked about, but you're speaking, you're keynoting Customer Service Revolution Conference later this year in November in Cleveland. What are some things that our audience will learn from attending your keynote?
Sure. You'll hear a little bit more about my own personal journey, how I came to cultivate this mindset of change enthusiasm, what it's all about, and how you can begin practicing it in your day-to-day and actually have some practical application of the mindset to help you grow through any change, any disruption that you might be going through, that your customers might be experiencing. There's also going to be a takeaway worksheet for everyone because I like things to be action oriented so that I'm not just a flash in the pan, but you'll hear the concepts in the keynote. You'll be armed with some exercises to put it into practice once you leave the conference as well.
This is awesome. If you have not come across Cassandra Worthy yet, you need to follow her. You need to read her book. You need to come and see her present. She brings so much positive energy and a contrarian way to look at things. I am so excited. Thank you so much for being on this. Cassandra, can I tell them the exciting news of what's...
Please do.
I'm so excited. She is going to, in a few weeks, probably after the podcast will probably come out just after, but she is getting married and I'm so happy for you. What an exciting time in your world. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. I was nervous. I don't know what news he's about to share, y'all.
Right. Well, I Googled you and saw some things that, I just decided not to bring up, but no, just kidding. Clean background, awesome background. I'm excited to hear more of it at the Revolution. Cassandra, I can't thank you enough for being on today, being our keynote speaker in November, and just what you're doing, the impact that you're having, your firm's having on so many people today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you to the listeners. And I hope I see all of you at the Revolution later on this year. Thank you so much.
Okay, there you have it, Revolutionaries. Thank you for another exciting episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And we will see you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and are ready to think about starting your own customer service revolution. To get inspired by more episodes, subscribe now on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening and for being part of the Customer Service Revolution.